Welcome, everyone. It looks like we've got about 40, 50 attendees in the session today. Welcome, everyone. So excited to have all of your faces in here, happy and ready to learn about 1099s. I want to welcome you all to the stress-free 1099 prep for property managers. This is hosted by APM Help. I am Jonathan Cook. I'm the community manager and help make sure and, content here, the newsletters, maybe some of you on the phone, just calling and trying to learn a little about your property management companies. I do that occasionally, but with us today, our special guest and our expert in all things 1099 is Rain Vanidot. Rain, how are you today?
Doing pretty good, Jonathan. Thank you. How are you?
I am fabulous, ready to get going, ready to get started. You've worked with our company actually since before I got here. Rain, can you give us a little bit of background into your time here at APM Help? You are our senior portfolio consultant. You certainly know about 1099 prep than I have, even with my 17 years of working in property management. Do you want to kind of give us an overview of what you do here at APM Help and what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I've been with APM Help for a little over 6 years now. And in that time, I dabbled in marketing. I actually was one of the original writers of our 1099 ebook, which was kind of the first exposure to 1099 that I got, as far as, really getting into the nitty-gritty of all of it. And then now I am one of the I'm the most senior portfolio consultant that we have here, and I help people prepare for 1099s, prepare for audits, lots of audit preparation. That's kind of our annual thing that we do. And then towards the end of the year, definitely focusing in on 1099 preparation. So yeah, it's great. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rain. You know so much about this. Yesterday when we were talking through all of our slides, making sure that we had everything prepped for this, I mean, it really impressed me how well the softwares, even when we're not even looking at the software in some of these slides, and your ability to be like, well, there's a spot here and this is where you go to find this information out. It's just like the amount of time that I've worked in softwares, it goes to show the difference between somebody that has worked in the software and maybe does on occasion, and like a true expert on it. It is a major difference. I'm really excited to have you here today, walking us through our 1099 prep. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the agenda looks like today? Walk us through what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, of course. So today, the first thing we're going to touch on is just the overview of the 1099 process, what it looks like from the beginning to the end of filing your 1099s. Then we're going to focus in on some key deadlines that everybody here should write down and put on your computer in a big sticky note so you don't forget. Then we're going to go over transmitter control codes. What are they? How do you apply for one? Is it necessary? The importance of early preparation of your 1099s. Then we're going to go over clean books, what that looks like, what are clean books, how do you achieve that, and then go over some of the common mistakes that people make when filing for 1099s.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're also going to have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. Once Rain tells us what we actually need to be doing to be prepared for our 1099s, we're going to have a section toward the end where we allow some Q&A. If you notice on the bottom right-hand side of the meeting, you'll have an activities button. Over there, you'll see Q&A, you'll see polls. If you've got questions and answers along the presentation today, just click on over there. You should be able to ask questions and our team will catch them. And toward the end, we'll start answering those questions kind of as they've come in. If your question doesn't get picked, it's because someone has asked a very similar question and we're trying to aggregate so we don't have to answer the same question 6 times in a row. We're just going to try and take a bunch of different questions and take the average of them. Also, I did want to get us started with a little bit of a poll before we quite jump into here. I've got a fun little poll here. I want to know how many people in the meeting today actually are confident that they are ready to file their 1099s. If you check again over there on the activities section, you should see polls. The poll is now live. Everyone go ahead and jump in there. Let's get some voting action going. And Rain, I want to hand this back over to you. Can we walk through kind of like an overview of this 1099? Like, what is a timeline? What does it look like when someone is getting prepped or just starting to think about 1099s?
Yeah. So when you're prepping for 1099s, this is kind of the basic structure of that preparation. So the first thing that you want to start with is doing a health check of your entire database. That's something that APM Help does for all of our clients when they first go live with us. We can look at it in less than 30 minutes and tell you exactly what needs to be cleaned. Or you can have, your bookkeeper or accountant do a quick overview just to catch anything that might be off. And we'll kind of go over what those things are later. Then you want to reconcile all of your bank accounts through December of 2024. Correct any tenant liability discrepancies to make sure you're completing those move outs. Make sure that you're addressing any prepaids that have been unapplied or any prepaid discrepancies, as well as completing any transfers that are outstanding. Then you want to address all management fee / additional fee collection issues. When I say additional fee, that's your additional management income. Softwares call it all different things, but that's your late fees, your application fees, things like that. Review unclear transactions pending on the bank reconciliation page. Mostly your deposits are what you want to focus in on here. And then you want to preview your 1099 summary reports for both your owners and your vendors to make sure you have complete information. Compare 1099s with the cash flow reports just to make sure that your totals are correct. Then you're ready to go ahead and submit your 1099 NECs first, as you'll see later why that's important, and then your 1099 MISCs.
That's several steps. That's a lot more complicated than just being like, I'm going to hit a button and it's good to go. Let's talk about these deadlines we have here. We just talked about what it overall looks like. What are these deadlines? What do we have to do to get here? What are these?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the 1099 deadlines, they have not changed from prior years. So this year, it will still remain that 1099 NECs are going to be the first that is due. That is on January 31st, 2025. That is for both e-filing and paper copies. And then on February 28th, that's when your 1099 miscellaneouses are due paper. And then on March 31st, that's when everything is due. Your 1099 miscellaneouses should be in, your NEC should be in. Everything should be submitted to the IRS by March 31st.
And one of the things that we talked about yesterday that I think a lot of people maybe have heard of, some people might not have this ready, but to be able to meet these deadlines, one of the things that everybody that's filing, from what I understand, we've got to talk about the transmitter control codes. Is that right?
Yes.
Let's talk about exactly what a TCC is.
Yeah, so a transmitter control code is the key thing that you need in order to e-file with the IRS. Something that you all need to keep in mind here is that pretty much every person in this call has to e-file. I think it was last year, no, it was 2 years ago that the IRS did change their requirements from being 250 people you could paper mail with the IRS, you could submit via paper with your 1096s and 1099s. That is no longer the case. If you have 10 people or less, you can still paper file with the IRS, but anything more than 10, you have to e-file. So that's almost everybody in this call, I would imagine. So vendors, owners, if you have more than 10 of those, you're going to have to e-file. The key here is that if you do have a TCC code already, that code is actually no longer valid if you received it before 2022. So you do have to submit a new application for a TCC. The TCC does take up to 8 weeks, I say here, but sometimes it can even take longer, like 12 weeks. We're already in December. So if you haven't gotten this application in, then my suggestion is get it as soon as you possibly can after this meeting. You've got 5 minutes after this meeting, Google IRS TCC application and get it in. File as soon as you possibly can, because the earlier you get it in, the better your chances of getting it before January 31st is what I say, but really you want it before then. You don't want to be waiting until that absolute last minute to get it.
And I'm sure we're probably going to get this question as we go, but I want to jump ahead of it. APM Help, if we are the ones actually filing your 1099, we've already got this. They don't have to get a TCC in that case if we are already filing for them. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we have a version of a TCC that allows us to file on behalf of others. So it doesn't have to just be any 1099s that are associated with our company's EIN. It can be any EIN. So yeah, that allows us to file for anybody here in this call.
Yeah, so if you're in this call and you're one of the pollsters that's not even close to ready, if you haven't gotten your TCC yet, now is a great day to reach out to our team and talk about what we can do for helping get your 1099s filed for you, because we're already prepared and ready for this. Let's talk a little bit more about the importance of early preparation. I mean, we saw those deadlines, and we've got till the end of January. Why are we talking about this on December 4th, Rain? What is the importance of this early 1099 prep?
Yeah, so there is so much that goes into 1099 prep. Honestly, if you have not already started preparing for some of these things that we're going to mention, you're already behind, because we're in December and you really want to make sure that you're able to go into this stress-free. So the importance of early preparation is to address those missing recipient details. That's so key. Getting your TINs in and your address is completed. Making sure you remove any vendors that shouldn't be getting 1099s. Like very common ones I see on lists are Home Depot, Best Buy, C Corps, and companies like that should not be getting 1099s. So making sure you're cleaning up that list so you don't have to do it later. Ensuring the accuracy of your recipients' totals. So it takes some time to look at those reports. You have to be comparing, your owner and your miscellaneous reports to your cash flows. You have to be comparing your NECs to all the payments that you've made to each vendor throughout the entire year to make sure that it's accurate. And something to help with that too is definitely going to be your reconciliations. You're going to be catching any missing payables. So that will help with the accuracy of your totals. And then acquiring a TCC before the end of the year, as I said, that takes time. We're looking between 8 to 12 weeks. That already puts you beyond the deadline. So you're already looking at having to file extensions. It's really important to get that in as early as possible. The IRS actually recommends filing for that in August. So quite a while ago. And then it's just, like I said, less stress when it comes to January 2025. We've got the holidays right around the corner, and the last thing you want to do is to go into the holiday season with all of this looming over your head.
One of the things that when we first decided that we are going to have this webinar and walk through like the process of getting 1099s prepped for the end of the year, we discussed making this webinar back in the end of September, beginning of October. And when we discussed the TCCs first, Rain, I think you're like, if people haven't already started getting their TCCs, they may still be late. And it was October at that time. And the amount of work that we've done just to kind of explain what this process is from October to today, there's a lot that goes in this. So I definitely will just kind of parrot the importance of getting this stuff early, taking care of it. I was a property manager for a long time. I know what those days are like. You walk in, you're ready to have a nice peaceful day, and before you've sat down, you've got tenants, you've got vendors, you've got owners beating down your doors, and you don't have that like extra space, extra time to sit down and open up your software and go, what all do I need to get taken care of so that I can be early and prepared for this? I've heard many times that, this is a preparation industry. Getting things tackled before you run into it is the key to running a good, smooth property management company. Putting out fires is still what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. So all the prep that you can do beforehand is truly fabulous. Let's talk about the critical steps for having clean books, because here at APM Help, what we look at as the key important factor for a property management company, when we say that we want to work with the best of the best property managers in the country, what we mean by that, it always starts with clean books. Can we talk about, why that's so important and what the critical steps that we have for getting clean really means before you start filing your 1099s?
Yeah. So the key things that you want to make sure that you do when you're cleaning up your books for 1099s, and keep in mind, this is just for 1099s. This is touching the tip of the iceberg for clean books. If you do these things, it does not mean that you have clean books. It just means that your 1099s are going to be more accurate, as accurate as possible. So keep that in mind as well. This does not mean that you have a certified clean books and you're going to pass an audit. So what we say when we mean clean books for 1099s, that means that you're addressing any unapplied prepayments and misuses of the prepaid GL account. I would say that 70% of the people that we get in our door have issues with their prepaid applications. So commonly what we see is people using the prepaid GL account in charges or credits. And the reason for that is because they'll get an early rent payment and then they'll put a charge towards prepaid rent. rather than putting that towards rent income, because at the end of the day, it is still rent income. And when you're using prepaid rent as that charge, now you're inflating the prepaid rent GL account because the prepayment is already being established with the receipt. So that's super common. We see prepaid accounts being used in like payables when people are refunding prepayments to tenants. That shouldn't be happening either, because then you're inappropriately applying prepaid rent again. Addressing any and all unclear deposits and expired checks. So this will help with your NECs, making sure that those checks are correct. But really more importantly, it's those deposits, making sure that anything that is uncleared is addressed, because you could have something like a duplicate rent receipt that's overinflating rent income, overinflating prepaid rent if it's not applied to a rent charge. And it's just completely wrong. It could also mean that you've overpaid your owner at some point. So really important to look into those to see why those receipts have not cleared the bank. And then lastly, you want to clean up any collected management fees and additional income accounts like application fees, late fees, and NSF fees. And the reason for that is because those are, again, income accounts. And a lot of people do not suppress these from your 1099s. So getting ahead of it this month and cleaning those up is going to prevent your owners from getting credits or being charged for income that they're not tracking on their books, that they don't see happening on their side, because those are typically things that they're not worried about tracking. In their management agreement, they don't get those things. So it's going to cause discrepancies between the 1099 that you provide versus the numbers that they have on their end.
I know we'll probably discuss this a little bit later as well. One of the things that I keep coming back to that I notice when it comes to like how property managers get their books so unclean. It doesn't seem, every time that we go over like how things should be done and like what it looks like to get clean and what each individual step is, it seems to me, and we'll discuss this a little bit later, that a lot of where the mistakes happen aren't malicious in any way, shape, or form. It's literally just these softwares are complicated enough because they need to be built to handle whatever kind of situation kind of runs at them. So it seems like a lot of these issues are just in not knowing the definitions for where some of this stuff should go. Am I too off base there, or does that sound like a lot of the stuff that you see, right?
It's definitely people just having a really good idea of how to log accounting, or maybe they have either CPAs, they've got history in bookkeeping. That's all great, but when you look into each software, every software uses different language. So, going in and knowing kind of conceptually how you want to record something doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to know how to do it in that software, because like I said, just to give an example, additional fees is what AppFolio calls those additional management income accounts, but Propertyware calls it additional management income. So it's just kind of all over the board. You have things being called different things, and people make mistakes because they just try their best to work around the verbiage and all the different complications of each software, I guess, or the complexities of each software. No. And then it leads to issues like this. So.
And I know we're going to talk about softwares a little bit later. Actually, we're going to talk about it right now. I know there's the differences between like not just what the reports are called, but it's actually some softwares have different capabilities as well. I know we discussed that different softwares have different 1099 capabilities too, right? Can you walk us through some of that?
Yeah. So of the softwares that we support, which are all listed here, I've actually submitted 1099s in 3 of those softwares. So just to kind of give some examples, AppFolio, they generate the 1099 files, they generate the 1099 PDFs that you can print and then mail to your vendors and owners. Buildium, they have the actual capability of e-filing for you straight from your database, which is amazing. And then Propertyware, they actually have all of the same things that AppFolio does, with the exception of being able to generate and download your PDF copies. So typically you have to go through like a third-party vendor to be able to download your copies to be able to send to your owners, or have some sort of software that will convert the text file for you to a PDF form that you can then send over to your vendors and owners. So every software has its pluses and its minuses when it comes to 1099 season. So one thing that's super important is that you start looking into all of your software's capabilities now, so that you're not shocked come January that you need to do some extra steps. Maybe you need to have a third party convert some PDFs for you. So definitely looking into that and understanding everything your software can do right now is very important.
Yeah, one of the things that I talked a lot about when I was at NARPM Nationals, which was a few months back, were the property managers that were switching from one software to another. And I got into a discussion where there's not a lot of property managers that I know of that have worked inside more than maybe two, maybe three of these softwares. And so while they all are doing, generally speaking, kinds of the same stuff, hey, it's all property management, right? We got to collect the rent, we got to pay the owners out, we got to pay the vendors, we got to do work orders. All of that stuff is taking place in these softwares. But I think one of the keys that I've noticed with property management companies is while your day-to-day might be in leasing or it might be in maintenance coordination, when it comes to bookkeeping, the little reports that you want, it's what we talked about earlier, they're different in each software. So if you've changed softwares this year, if you are in the middle of like a data migration, and then now you've got to go back and do your 1099s, and you've gone from Build-In where they'll do it for you to say today, now you're in AppFolio or Rentvine, like you need to make sure that you are talking with someone that's not just like what we discussed earlier, just a CPA or an accountant or somebody that knows how to, like, what the steps are, but someone who really understands the software capabilities, that understands where each report lives, what they're called, what they look like. So when you ask for a P&L, they give you the right report. Am I making sense here, Rain?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that is a great point. Softwares do call reports different things. Some software don't even have reports that are available, in AppFolio or in Propertyware or in Buildium. So knowing if you even have those reports at the ready is super important to know as well. Yeah, great point there. And something I will say too is a lot of these softwares do offer trainings on how to use their software to file 1099s. So that is something I would recommend everybody in this call also look into in your related help center for each of these software, because more than likely they do have articles that walk you through exactly what they offer for their software. So you don't have to do quite as much digging to figure out what exactly you can do.
And just as another point, I want to make sure that everyone here is aware. APM Help has been doing a lot of free software education. We finished our series on AppFolio about a month and a half ago, and they're all on our YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about actually operating in these softwares, APM Help looks at the education this way. If we're doing it for you, great. We would love to help you with that sort of thing. If you don't want us to do it for you, we're happy to teach you what it looks like to get things in these softwares done. So make sure you visit all of our education pieces, visit our website, go to the YouTube channels, go to the Facebook groups. We're always here trying to make the industry a cleaner and better place to operate. Let's scooch on over here to what the common pitfalls are. I know, we probably could have made this section 45 minutes alone. Just like, what does it look like when people mess up in not just their software, not just getting clean, but like even in just getting ready for 1099s. Rain, walk us through what these pitfalls are. And I do want to let everyone know, like I said, your Q&A section, if you go down to activities, let's go ahead and get your questions in there. We'll discuss those a little bit further on in the meeting today. We'll go through the questions and ask what it looks like or what questions you guys have, but make sure you get your questions in. Rain, walk us through these common pitfalls and how to avoid them.
Yeah, so these are ones that we see most commonly. There are other pitfalls for sure that happen, but these, I would say, at least 50% of the clients that we work with are guilty of at least one of these pitfalls. Well, if I say at least one of these pitfalls, probably 80% of the clients we work with are probably guilty of one of these. So first off is not addressing discrepancies in the books. These discrepancies could go back all the way to 2019, 2017 in some cases, that have just been camping out there and not being addressed and carrying over year over year. So it's really important that you're reconciling and that you're really digging into all of the different discrepancies that you're having in your books. Softwares do help with this. So like, for example, AppFolio, they have a diagnostics page, which is your best friend, and it will tell you any discrepancies that you have in those additional fee accounts. So it's super handy to use that. And then if you click into each of those, you will see that you do have some issues, most likely that do date back to like 2017. So in those cases, there are a variety of ways to correct them. If you're confused about how to go about correcting those, you can always reach out to us, but there are typically ways to write things off, not typically a recommendation there. And then also reimbursing for those discrepancies. Also prepaid discrepancies, those go way back as well typically. So it takes some time to look into these discrepancies if you have not been keeping on top of it. So just keep that in mind. And that bleeds into the next point here is waiting until that last minute, because you do sometimes have discrepancies that are really old, and they're going to take some time and they're going to take some nurturing to actually figure out and get correct so that you can make sure that you're giving your owners and vendors accurate 1099s, especially also with that TCC code. I'm not kidding around, guys, when I say that it is going to take between 8 to 12 weeks, and we are already at the cusp of that. So if you don't get it in today, you've got to get it in soon, and just cross your fingers that you're going to get a TCC, or you can always reach out to us to help. But, waiting until the last minute to get your TCC, something as simple as that, is something that could potentially really hurt you. But then waiting until the last minute to also address any discrepancies in your books, to reconcile your accounts. Also, you're just going to be really, really stressed after the new year if you're waiting until after the holidays. Do not recommend that. Misapplication of income accounts such as bad debt, miscellaneous income, deposit forfeit, and move out charge GL accounts. This is the most common set of accounts that we see misapplication and misuse of, but there are a slew of accounts. Sometimes people get really creative with the usage of income accounts, and so the possibilities are endless. But what you really want to do to dig into this is run a cash flow report for all of your properties and just see kind of what income accounts you have. See, does it make sense? And then look at your chart of accounts and see what's excluded or exempt from 1099s. Does it make sense to actually exempt that? So for instance, deposit forfeiture. There are two ways that deposit forfeiture happens, most commonly that I see, and that is deposit forfeiture being to the management company. So, you're putting it towards forfeit because you're paying for cleaning at the management company, or maybe you have a early lease end charge, but you put it towards deposit forfeit. That typically is not exempt from 1099. So that income is actually being taxed to your owners. But in those cases, it actually went to the management company. So you should have a deposit forfeiture account that is specific to management forfeiture. And then you have a deposit forfeiture account specific to owner forfeiture, where you actually forfeit it because of an owner related reason or something that you've agreed to with your owner, where they're getting that income. So super key there. Also, typically with move out charges, people are applying those towards expense GL accounts, when in actuality, it is income because you are transferring that income to your owners to cover their expenses. So little things like that. Not taking the time to understand your requirements by state. There are different requirements, especially with 1099s at the end of the year that certain states require. New York is the most common example that I can give you, but every single state, you just want to make sure that you're looking into your state requirements to make sure you're not missing anything. Because the worst thing that you could do is January 31st, you're like, I did it. I'm done. I got it all in. And then all of a sudden the IRS comes back to you and says, hey, you didn't submit these required forms for your state. Where are those? And then you're scrambling last minute to get it all together. So again, that's waiting until the last minute. Don't do it. Look at those state requirements now and make sure you get all of that prepared at the same time you're doing your 1099 preparations. And then lastly, I'm going to harp on this a million times. I'll say it all the time. Bank account reconciliations are the most important thing that you can do in your database to make sure that your accounting is up to date and is accurate, because you're going to be catching things like deposits maybe that weren't entered. You'd be surprised how many people forget to enter rent receipts. Also, not entering checks that have been cashed. You'd be surprised how many people forget to pay the bill. You enter the bill in, and then as Jonathan said, you've got fires all over the place. You forget to actually pay that bill, but you hand wrote the check in the office and gave it to the vendor or whoever it was. But in actuality, that wasn't actually recorded within AppFolio. Therefore, your 1099 for your owner or for your vendor is understated. So bank reconciliations are super important in that aspect.
Now that we've seen these common pitfalls, like there's a lot of them, guys. It's so many things that we can run into. Let's talk about what happens when we do those mistakes. What is the impact of incorrectly filing your 1099s?
It's bad. It's really bad. You want to avoid it. You do not want to be late. Guys, just do it out early, please.
Serious slide today.
Yes, this is a very serious slide. Hear me out when I say it is no joke to file late. When you do file late, the IRS, number one, will charge you a late fee. Those typically range anywhere between $60 to $310 per form that is filed. That is per each 1099 NEC or NEC, MISC and NEC that you file. So it's not just for the batch. It's not, oh, this company filed late, that's $310. No, it's $310 times 200 files. That's a late fee that I'm pretty sure nobody here wants to pay. So make sure you're getting those in or filing your extensions. But in order to file an extension, guess what? You have to have a TCC, or you have to submit a special form with the IRS, which takes some time. So don't wait. It could also trigger an audit. This is something that I have seen personally happen in the past. Triggering an audit happens because you're filing late. Your owners are already scratching their heads and thinking, why couldn't you get me my 1099 by January 31st? They have deadlines to meet too. So you're already kind of getting your owners in this situation where they're getting frustrated. They're not understanding why their 1099s weren't given to them in the time that they thought it would be. And then you have the other side too, where maybe you didn't reconcile, you didn't check everything off. And so when you're providing those 1099s, maybe it doesn't match the totals that the owner has on their end. And then they're coming back and asking you why it doesn't match. They need additional reporting. Then they're questioning, why doesn't it match? What were you doing with your accounting? Were you guys reconciling? What's the rest of my books look like? And then they're really digging into everything. And if you can't answer those questions, if you can't give your owner the reports that they're wanting, they may potentially tell on you. They'll go to you and they'll trigger an audit. They will file a formal complaint, which is not great. And I have seen it happen. So this is not something I'm just making up. You can avoid these things by, I know this is surprising for everybody, but clean up your books today. Start today, clean up your books, get everything reconciled, address those discrepancies, get it all cleaned up so that you can get your owners what they need on time, get your vendors what they need on time. Review all the recipient details and request W-9s. You should be requesting W-9s as soon as you start work with a vendor. So you can avoid this situation at the end of the year where you're not able to get those in a timely manner. But if you don't have them, request them now so you can get that information in. And then, surprise here, reconcile your bank accounts. Do that today. Do that this week. Next week at the latest. But you do not want to go into your Christmas holiday or any of your winter holidays not having your bank accounts reconciled. It's stressful, and this is the number one thing. This is the best place to start to make sure that your books are on the right track for 1099s.
I'm not going to throw anybody under a bus about when the last time anybody I know has reconciled, but this is a topic of conversation that I have. It seems like it's always in private with property managers. Hey, when's the last time you reconciled? Ooh, don't ask me that question. You know, it's one of those issues that maybe is a bit touchy occasionally, but let's say we don't want to run into any of these issues with our 1099 filing. Can we talk a little bit about what it looks like to have APM Help step in and handle this for clients? Because I've seen a lot. Thank you all so much for the questions that we have here. We've got a ton of audience questions. I'm going to try and get to as many of them as we can. But I think before we get into that, this is going to answer at least some of these questions, maybe right here. When it comes to, look, I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, I don't want to file my 1099s. I would rather have an expert do this. I am not an APM Help client or whatever it might be. What does it look like? Can you walk us through how APM Help does 1099 services for their clients? Can you walk us through that, Rain?
Yeah, so with 1099 services, we'll always start by doing a 30-minute check on your database. Whether you're a current client or a new client, we're just going to get a good idea of where your books are. Make sure that there's no cleanup needed. And if there is a cleanup needed, we'll obviously provide you a quote with that. Keep in mind that this is a very busy time of year for APM Help. So the longer you wait, the chances are good that you might also have to pay a rush fee on top of that, because we have demand that we have to meet too. And we want to make sure that we get your 1099s in by January 31st. That is something we try to guarantee as much as possible. So the closer we get to that deadline, the higher the rush fee gets, because the more we have to push back and prioritize things, work longer days just to make sure that we're getting everything in and done on time for you and your company. So if you're worried about this, if you want to get 1099, if you want to get your database looked at, get 1099s going, make sure you're reaching out today or this week. I think you guys are all tired of hearing me say, do it today, but If anything, I want to motivate you all to just really start looking into these. If you're going to do two things today, let it be file for that TCC if you're planning on doing it on your own, and cross your fingers. And then also reach out to APM Help, because it doesn't hurt. Even if you're one of those people in the poll that said, yes, I'm ready to file my 1099s, it wouldn't hurt. It's a free 30-minute conversation with us just to make sure that you are actually ready to file your 1099s.
We have some people that are very confident that they are ready to file their 1099s.
Which I love. I love that.
The rest of the poll, not quite so much. We've got some people that need some help, and we've got some people that are nowhere even close. And that was kind of to be expected. When we put the poll together, I was pretty sure we were going to get a lot of people on those other two answers. I'm excited that there are two people that are absolutely ready to go. Maybe there are some of our clients and they already know that, like, hey, APM Help has already got this for us. It's done. It's ready. I'm not concerned. But for the rest of you folks, you can visit our website today, click in the services, go to 1099 support. You've got a little form fill that you can fill out right there. And if you're new to APM Help, if you're not one of our current clients, our team will reach out to you and we'll walk you through a free 30-minute consultation where we look at what's going on in your books and tell you what you need to do to get prepared and ready for 1099s. If you're one of our clients today, you can reach out to contact. If you're already in our trust account bookkeeping, if we're already doing your trust accounts for you, just make sure that you reach out to your point of contact and they'll tell you that, hey, it's already been taken care of. But if you have some of our other services, you might want to reach back out to our team. If you have like daily bank reconciliations, that was one that it doesn't come with the e-filing. So make sure that you reach out to your point of contact there, and let's go ahead and get you signed up for 1099 services if you're looking for that this year.
Just one thing I wanted to clarify on this is if you do choose to use our services for e-filing, you do not need a TCC. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, we have a TCC that allows us to file for everybody. That is a very common question that I get. So no, you do not need a TCC if you file with APM Help.
And that's kind of a perfect transition right here to the Q&As, because if I got that question once, I got that question, what can someone do? Let's go ahead and let's start with that question. If someone hasn't applied for their TCC yet, if someone is in that situation, hey, I haven't even started, what is an option that they have if they aren't able to get their TCC? Who can help them with that?
APM Help can, for sure. What I say to that person is go ahead and apply for the TCC. You could be one of the lucky ones. It doesn't always take 12 weeks. So apply today, get that application in, start preparing, do all of the reconciliations, take care of all the accounting stuff while you're waiting. And then in January, probably the second week of January, if you still haven't heard anything, then you should definitely start exploring other options, reaching out to APM Help, figuring out who can file those 1099s for you if that TCC does not come through in the next 2 weeks.
If someone has filed their 1099s under a TCC number in 2023, is that TCC code still good for 2024?
It is, yes.
Okay, so last year, they're good. If they've got it last year, their numbers is fabulous for this year. Okay, Let's go to one of these other questions. So Christy Scribbling asked, let me find it again. I just moved. If we will release another 1099 ebook this year, which, Rain, you worked on that quite extensively, and we do have
it's available.
Yeah, you can go to our website today and fill out the form, and you can get a copy of that. I believe we actually might have sent that out as a part of this webinar preparation. You might have a link in one of the emails letting you know what time we were doing the webinar today. You might have a link to it in there, Kristen. So make sure you look and see if you can find it right there.
If not, it is on our website under resources for everybody there. You'll see the resources tab, and then it's at the bottom there, 1099 ebook.
Absolutely fabulous. How do we confirm our state requirements, right?
So that would be best to go through your state, through the Real Estate Commission. That's the best place to start for sure. Also just asking around to local property management companies that you trust and know also are in the same position that you're in. They might have a better idea. It's always better to ask a friend than try to dig through the interwebs, but running a simple Google search should actually pull up what you need.
Great. Let's move on down to what is the easiest way to confirm 1099 totals?
The easiest way is to, number one, make sure that your books are clean first. And then number two, unfortunately, is comparing every single amount that you have to your cash flow reports. Make sure that when you are looking at your cash flow reports, you are including your prepaid rent. That is a requirement by the IRS. They call it advanced rent. So you're taking your total operating income plus the net change in prepaid rent, and then that should equal your 1099 total. If it doesn't, the best way to start troubleshooting that is to look at those additional income accounts that we've mentioned to see what balances are in there, and look at your chart of account settings to see what's exempt to make sure that that's all correct.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Jenna Bowen wants to know, does APM Help send e-files to the IRS as well as to owners?
Yes. So that was the two options that we have. The $2.50 will get your 1099s to the IRS. That's our e-filing option. And then the $4.50 is paper mailing. So that's sending paper copies to your vendors and your owners. It is two separate charges. So altogether it is $7 if you want both of the options per recipient.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. Janeth Mokhtar has asked, do we need to provide a 1099 for LLCs? You mentioned C Corps, but not. What about other entries such as trusts, LLCs, etc., stuff like that?
The best thing to do is to ask the individual if you're unsure. The unfortunate thing with LLCs is it really does just depend on how they are registered internally as, sole proprietorship, partnerships, things like that. It really does fall back down onto the vendor to tell you whether or not they do need to receive a 1099 if you're not sure.
Perfect. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to ask one more question, because I know we've got about 2 minutes left. And I want to ask, I've got another anonymous question here. A few vendors are not supplying W-9s. How should a property manager handle this getting ready for 1099 season? Because that's a little bit of maybe a little bit more in-depth question than what else we got here. We've got a lot more repeats here, and thank you all for asking such wonderful questions. I really appreciate everyone being so engaged into our 1099 meeting today. But I want to ask this one last question before we run up against time.
Yeah, so it's really common actually that people run into this. We are still in early December, so my suggestion is keep going at it until you possibly cannot anymore. You're at the last week of January or maybe the last 2 weeks of January, and you just want to say, okay, white flag, we're going to make sure we get the rest of our 1099s in for our vendors. Simply what you'll do is remove them from the 1099 list that you have so that you can still generate the bulk file. And then unfortunately, what you're going to have to do, so you might want to prepare now, is you're going to need paper copies of 1099 NEC forms for the IRS, which you can get typically on Amazon, Office Depot. Any of your local office supply stores should typically have these documents, but you'll have to physically submit a paper file for them. And then in the box where it says TIN, you'll just say refused to, or what is it? I think it's did not supply, or it says on the IRS exactly the verbiage that they need. I can double check on that, and then we can include that in a follow-up email. But you'll just have to put it into the TIN box and then submit it to the IRS. And that is how you would handle that.
Awesome. Well, we've got one final question that I'm actually going to address before we let everyone go. Ken has asked if we're going to have this video that we are recording available and linked sent to everyone via email after this meeting. This will be made available, not immediately. We will take this video, this wonderful webinar here. Thank you so much, Rain. Everyone, give Rain a round of applause via your little buttons down there. I appreciate your time so much today. We will have this video as part of an educational series towards the end of January. Don't quote me on that. I'm not quite sure where we're going to have it ready to actually go. But, we wanted to do this one live, as well as, being able to get as many people here learning what's going on beforehand. Feel free to email us specific questions. If you have, please take advantage of that free 30-minute consultation. If you're not an APM Help client, we want to make sure that everybody gets on top of this and they don't run into this at the end of their time frame and they're looking at this and getting all these fines and stuff. So let's make sure that you're prepared for 1099 season when it gets here. We're running up against holiday season and then New Year's, and you blink and it's February already. So let's get on top of this, guys. But Ken, we will have this video available on our website. Not immediately. It'll probably be a handful of weeks before we make that available. Reach out to our team and we'll make sure that we have some sort of reminder to let you know, Ken, we've made it available. We invited everyone here today. This was by invitation only to be able to be a part of our webinar. So we didn't want to just invite everyone and then make it immediately free right afterwards. But thank you all so much for joining today. I appreciate everyone's time. Make sure to reply via email if you have any other questions. We'll be sending one more follow-up email by the end of the day today. Thank you so much for joining, and everyone have a happy holiday season. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.